Hi, I'm Chad with Move Forward Guitar. This lesson is from our series, How to Memorize Guitar Notes. In this lesson, I'm going to teach you the musical alphabet. First off, if you like all the diagrams from this series, including the diagrams from this lesson, you can download our free e-guide, Memorize Guitar Notes. But I am working on it right now as I'm filming this lesson, so it might not be available as you're watching the lesson. But once it is available, a link will pop up on the screen that'll allow you to download it. And like I said, it's free, so there's no reason not to download it when it is available. This is part 1 from our new series, How to Memorize Guitar Notes. In this series, I'll give you lots of different ways to visualize the fretboard and different tricks for memorizing all the notes on the fretboard. And it's extremely important to learn all the notes on your fretboard. It's not something that you have to learn right away as a beginner, but eventually it will hold you back if you don't know all the notes, if you don't know where all your A's are, where all your B's are, etc. in every spot on the fretboard. And I think it's better to start learning it early on because it takes time to learn this and really master it. It's not something you're going to learn overnight. So if you can start pretty early, once you've been playing for a while, it'll just be really natural to you and set you way ahead. And you don't have to follow every lesson in this series. I'm going to throw out lots of different ways you can visualize the fretboard and lots of different tricks for memorizing the fretboard. But some are going to work for you, some aren't. Everyone learns differently, so it's important just to go through, pick the ones that work well for you and stick with it and use it over and over, and eventually you'll memorize the fretboard. But don't think that you have to learn every trick that I'm teaching. I just want to give as many possibilities as I can that I think are helpful and I know that have helped me or other guitarists. And then, like I said, you can pick and choose what works best for you. And also, I'm starting with the basics. I'm going all the way back to the musical alphabet just to make sure that if you are brand new to the guitar, that you can follow along. But if you're more advanced, if you know a lot of the early lessons, just skip them and move ahead. And I guarantee that you will find useful lessons in this series if you don't know your fretboard really well. So definitely skip ahead to future lessons if you know a lot of the stuff in the early lessons. So first, I just want to make sure that you're looking at this diagram correctly. This is your fretboard, and this would be your 6th string, and this would be your 1st string. So if you're looking at your guitar holding it, the 1st string you would see would be this one right here. So that can be confusing if you're not used to looking at chord diagrams or fretboard diagrams, but I just want to make that clear early on that this is your 6th string, this is your 1st string. And then of course these vertical lines are your frets, these dots are your fret markers. So if I was to take this and put all the notes of the guitar on here, it would look like this. So this would be all the notes on your fretboard. And just looking at this seems really overwhelming, and you wonder, how are you going to memorize all these notes? But it's a lot simpler than it looks, because really there's only 12 notes to memorize, and then they repeat over and over. And through this series, I'm really going to help you systematize the fretboard so that it's easier to visualize the fretboard in chunks and in different ways, so that you're not just looking at a mess of notes or a mess of dots on the fretboard. You can actually really start breaking it apart, and eventually over time it'll become really clear to you and you'll be able to see it really fast, and no matter where you're on the fretboard, you'll know what note you're playing. So the most important thing to learn first is the musical alphabet. And the musical alphabet is really simple because it's just like the regular alphabet, except that it stops on G. So G is the last note of the musical alphabet, and then it starts back over at A. So you have A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And if you remember that I said that the musical alphabet has 12 notes, you may be wondering why there's not 12 notes on your screen. There's only 7 notes right now, and that's because of what are called accidentals. They're sharps or flats. So what is on your screen right now are all the natural notes, meaning they don't have any sharps or flats in them. And a sharp looks like this, and a flat looks like this. So you have 7 natural notes, which are just A, B, C, D, E, F, G, so just the alphabet to G, and then it starts over. But then in between most of these notes, you have a sharp and a flat. The only places that don't get sharps or flats are between the B and the C, and the E and the F. And we'll talk more about this later, but just know that there's no B sharp or C flat, no E sharp or F flat. There's only B and C, E and F. If you're looking at written music, sometimes you'll run across those, but really they're just, if you, for example, if you saw a C flat, it's really just a B, but don't worry too much about that right now. Just for now, know that there's no accidentals in between the B and C or E and F. So if we were to fill in the accidentals, the sharps and flats, it would look like this. So now we just still have from A to G, but as you can see, there's sharps and flats. There's A sharp and B flat, C sharp and D flat, D sharp and E flat, F sharp and G flat, and G sharp and A flat. And the reason they have two names is because it depends on the musical situation what you would call it. You wouldn't call it both names at once, although on a diagram it might be written that way if you're looking at a fretboard, because it's important to realize that it's both. But in a piece of music, if you would either see, for example, an A sharp or a B flat, and it just depends on the musical situation and the key you're in. But they're what are called inharmonic equivalents, which means they're the exact same note with a different name. And that's because if you were to raise the pitch of an A 1/2 step, which we'll talk about steps coming up, you would get an A sharp. But if you were to lower the pitch of a B 1/2 a step, you get a B flat. That's why it's either an A sharp or a B flat, because it's in between an A and a B. And it just depends on the musical situation, like I said, what you would call it. But that's how you can think about it. In between A and B is either an A sharp or a B flat, because you're either raising the A to the A sharp or you're lowering the B to a B flat, because sharp is raising in pitch, flat is lowering in pitch. But don't worry too much about that now. We'll talk more about that later as well. So that's all 12 notes of the musical alphabet. So no matter what instrument you're playing, these are the only 12 notes you're going to run across from A to G, and then you have sharps and flats in between all of the notes except B and C and E and F. So that means if we were to look at this fretboard again with all the notes laid out, the only notes on here are the musical alphabet. There's nothing past the musical alphabet. All these notes are just repeated. For example, you can see an F here, but there's an F here, there's an F here, there's an F here, there's an F here, and so on. There's nothing past the G, or actually G sharp. Everything stops after G and then repeats back again at A, no matter where you look on the fretboard. And in these lessons, I'm going to show you how you can visualize this to really make it a lot easier to figure out where these all land. So again, just to review really quick what I said, the musical alphabet only has 12 notes. It follows along with the regular alphabet, except that it ends on G and starts over at A. There's nothing past the G, there's no H, I, J, etc. And there's 7 natural notes, meaning they don't have sharps or flats, but then you throw in the sharps and flats between all the notes except B and C and E and F. Then when you throw those in, that's where you end up with the 12 notes of the musical alphabet. And these are the only notes you're going to find on your fretboard. There's no other notes besides these. These just repeat over and over, which we'll talk about in upcoming lessons. So that's the musical alphabet, which is the first step in learning all the notes on your fretboard. Go ahead and move on to the next lesson, where I'm going to teach you the names of the open strings. If you already know that, you can go ahead and skip on to the third lesson. And be sure to download the e-guide. All these diagrams are in there. And be sure to subscribe, because we had at least one new lesson every day.